Hello, friends. Today I'll reveal the story of a guardian who saved a girl from tragedy, only to bind her in ways she never saw. This is Elias, the man who raised Maya after her parents' fatal crash. Behind his steady care lies a control that turns protection into possession. Watch closely. The camera shakes in my grip, the cheap webcam's lens fogging slightly from my breath. It's just me in this dim bedroom, the kind Elias picked out. Soft blues to soothe the nerves, he said. I lean closer, my fingers twisting the silver bracelet on my wrist, the one he gave me after the accident. It clinks softly, a chain of delicate links, cool against my skin like a promise. Or a tether. I need to get this out, I start, voice cracking like thin ice. My heart hammers, a frantic bird trapped in my chest. Elias has always been there. Since I was 6, when the world cracked open and swallowed my parents in that wreck. He pulled me from the rubble, not literally, but close enough. Social services called him my guardian angel, the man who stepped in when no one else would. He navigated the paperwork, the therapies, the endless questions from strangers in suits. "Let me handle it, Maya," he'd say, his voice steady as the tide outside our cliffside home. And I did. I let him. I pause, swallowing hard. The bracelet catches the lamplight, winking like an eye. It feels heavier tonight, the clasp digging in as I shift. Why does it suddenly pinch? I rub it absent-mindedly, the metal warming under my thumb. Elias chose it. Said it symbolized our bond, protection etched in silver. "Wear it always," he urged, fastening it himself, his fingers lingering. "Safety," he called it. But as I stare at the screen, my reflection fractured and pale. A whisper stirs in my gut. Not gratitude, something sharper. "He made the rules feel like lifelines," I continue, words tumbling faster now, laced with that old tremor of reliance. The fog rolls in beyond the window, blurring the coastline into ghosts. Curfews weren't cages. They were shields against the chaos out there. His advice? Not control, but care. He warned me about the vultures, opportunists, he said, circling girls like me. I never questioned it because why would I? He was the constant in my storm. The one who locked the doors at night, who monitored my calls to keep the predators away. My breath hitches. The camera wobbles as my hand falters, brushing the bracelet again. It jingles, a tiny alarm in the quiet room. Protection. The word echoes in my head, but it twists now, coiling like the links around my wrist. What if the lock isn't on the door, but here? I bite my lip, tasting salt. No, that's the unease talking, the fog playing tricks. Elias wouldn't. He couldn't. Yet the doubt creeps in, cold and insistent, suspicion blooming where trust once rooted deep. "I trusted him completely," I whisper, eyes flicking to the door as if he might appear. Because without that trust, what am I? Adrift in this city of shadows. The words hang, unanswered. The bracelets wait, a silent question on my skin. Is this really safety? Or just the illusion of it, chaining me in place? The fog clung to the coastal cliffs like a shroud. But in my memories, it was always clearer. Those early days when the world felt vast and Elias, my anchor. I was 6, maybe 7, barefoot on the jagged rocks, chasing a gull that snatched my favorite ribbon. Waves crashed below, hungry. I slipped, teetered on the edge, heart pounding like a trapped bird. Then his voice cut through. "Maya, hold still." Strong arms yanked me back, his grip iron but warm. He dusted me off, eyes twinkling with that paternal fire. "Can't have you tumbling into the drink, little one. Who's going to keep the monsters at bay if not me?" I nodded, safe in his shadow, the ribbon forgotten. Cut to the schoolyard. Rain-slicked pavement mirroring the gray sky. Bullies circled, their taunts sharp as broken glass. Orphan girl, freak, pushing me against the chain-link fence. I curled small, tears mixing with puddles. Elias appeared like a storm breaking, his coat flapping, voice booming with authority. Back off, she's under my watch. He scooped me up, carried me to the car, murmuring, "They don't see your strength yet, Maya. But I do. Stick with me." In the rear view, his reflection smiled, and the world righted itself. Dependence bloomed then, a quiet vine wrapping my ribs. Nights in the mansion's dim halls, thunder rattling windows. I'd wake screaming from nightmares, shadows with teeth, devouring everything soft. Elias was there, every time, sitting on the bed's edge, hand on my forehead. "Breathe, child. The dark can't touch you here." One stormier evening, after the lightning forked too close, he slipped a silver bracelet onto my wrist. Delicate chains linking tiny charms, a lock, a key, a wave-frozen gull. "For protection," he said, fastening the clasp with a click that echoed. It fit perfectly, cool against my pulse. "Wear it always. It's your shield." I traced the links, feeling invincible, his stories of past rescues weaving tighter. The time he pulled me from a riptide I barely remembered, or chased off a stray dog with bared teeth. Each tale burnished his myth, my gratitude a polished stone. But now, replaying it all in this montage of fractured light, a faint unease stirs. His interventions, were they pulls from peril or tugs into his orbit? The bracelet weighs heavier in memory, its charms glinting not just with care, but something colder like links in a subtle snare. Hope lingers in those saves, yet doubt flickers at the edges. What hid behind the hero's gaze? The attic smelled of dust and forgotten salt air, the kind that clung to the foggy coastline below our mansion like a shroud. I was up here sorting Elias's old files, his guardian duties, he'd called them. Boxes of papers that proved how he'd saved me, again and again. My fingers brushed a loose floorboard, and it gave way with a creak that echoed in my chest. Beneath it, a small, leather-bound journal, locked with a tiny brass clasp that looked like it could snap under a firm twist. Surprise hit first, sharp as sea spray. Elias never hid things from me. He said transparency was our bond. Heart thudding, I pried it open with a paperclip, the pages yellowed and crammed with his neat script. Dates stretched back years, not just mine, but others. Names I vaguely recognized from his mentorship circle. Subject MO. Initial compliance phase complete. Reinforce dependency via scheduled affirmations. Isolate from external validators to prevent narrative drift. My breath caught. It wasn't poetry or plans. It was a ledger of control, entry after entry. How he'd stage crises to pull me closer, whisper doubts about friends until I clung to him alone. Gift bracelet as tactile anchor. Remind of protection's weight. I touched the silver chain on my wrist, the one he'd given after that cliffside rescue when I was 12. It had felt like love then, a talisman against the world's edges. Now it bit cold against my skin. Thoughts spun, unraveling the stories I'd swallowed whole. All those times he'd shielded me from dangers, the overprotective calls, the vetoed plans. Were they rescues or rehearsals? My awe, the way I'd mirrored his every word, wasn't born from gratitude alone. It was scripted, fed line by line until I believed the role. The attachment I'd cherished trembled, exposed as a lever he'd pulled. Intimacy? Just another tool in his authoritative kit, masked as care. Unease coiled in my gut, thick and fog-like, blurring what I thought I knew. Could I trust the memories I'd polished like sea glass? Or were they all revisions, his hand guiding mine even in retrospect? I snapped the journal shut, the lock clicking like a warning, and slid it into my coat. Downstairs, Elias's voice called my name, warm as ever. But the fairy tale cracked, and suspicion seeped in. The rain-slicked streets of the coastal city gleamed under sodium lamps, turning the world into a mosaic of shattered reflections. Maya huddled in the doorway of the precinct, her coat heavy with mist, watching Detective Lila Brooks through the glass doors. Lila's silhouette moved like a shadow in the fluorescent glow, efficient, unhurried. Another guardian, Maya's mind whispered, stepping in to rewrite my story. The journal burned in her bag, its leather cover a weight she'd carried for days, hidden like a guilty secret. She needed this, needed someone to verify the entries, the dates that didn't match Elias's tales of rescue. But trust, that was a trap she'd fallen into before. She pushed inside, the door chiming like a warning. Lila looked up from her desk, eyes sharp but not unkind, the kind of gaze that catalogued without judgment. Miss Ortega? You said it was urgent. Maya slid into the chair opposite, her fingers twisting the strap of her bag. What if she calls him? What if this is just another layer of control? The detective's badge caught the light, a cold authority that echoed Elias's charismatic grip. I found something, Maya said, voice low, pulling out the journal. Its pages fluttered open to a scrawled entry. May 12th, 2015. Staged the intervention at the docks. She'll cling tighter now. No accusations, just facts bleeding onto paper. Lila's brow furrowed as she scanned the lines, her pen tapping rhythmically. This is Elias Carter's handwriting? The mentor everyone's always praising? She didn't touch it yet, waiting, as if sensing the fragility. Outside, rain lashed the window, pooling in the alley and mirroring the room in fractured light. Maya's face distorted, watchful, the detective's steady form unbroken. Maya's pulse hammered. Hand it over, and it's out of hiding. But what if she twists it, like he did? It's patterns, she murmured. Rescues that weren't. I need you to check the records quietly, without involving him. Distrust coiled in her chest, sharp as the fog rolling in from the sea. But necessity pushed it toward something tentative, a guarded probe. Lila nodded slowly, gloved hands finally taking the journal. I'll cross-reference with old case files. No promises on speed. Cold leads like this get buried. But if it's what I think... She met Maya's eyes, holding them. You're not alone in handing this over. We'll verify step by step. The words hung, a fragile bridge. Maya exhaled, the mistrust easing into cautious vigilance. Not blind faith, but a deliberate choice. The rain's reflections danced on the floor, blurring the line between seeker and sought, safety and snare. Could she unearth the truth without shattering her last illusion of shelter? The fog clung to the mansion's windows like a second skin, blurring the line between inside and out. I sat at the kitchen island, my fingers tracing the cool marble, heart thudding in that familiar rhythm. Fear, sharp and instinctive, the kind that had kept me alive since I was a kid. Elias entered without a sound, his footsteps muffled on the Persian rug, but I felt him before I saw him, always. Maya, he said, voice smooth as the chamomile tea he poured for me. You look peaked. Did you sleep? I nodded, eyes on the steam rising from the mug he slid across to me. Stricter routines, he'd called it yesterday. Breakfast at 7:15 sharp, no later. Journaling my thoughts, only the safe ones, he implied with that paternal tilt of his head. No more wandering the coastal paths alone. The fog was too thick, too full of what-ifs. But today, The air felt heavier, laced with something unspoken. He sat opposite, his gaze lingering on my wrist. The bracelets, silver links he'd gifted over the years, each one a milestone, a promise of protection. They tinkled softly as I reached for the mug, but now they weighed like iron, chaining my arm to the table's edge. I twisted one, feeling the clasp bite into my skin, a subtle reminder. These weren't just jewelry. They tracked me, or so the paranoia whispered, syncing with a new app on my phone that buzzed every hour for check-ins. "You're meeting that detective friend of yours today?" His tone was casual, but the undercurrent pulled like a riptide. Lila. I'd mentioned her offhand, a slip. Now, his eyes narrowed, not angry. Never angry Elias, the lifelong guardian, but concerned. Oh, so concerned, after what happened last time. Remember the scare with those reporters? I can't lose you to their chaos, Maya. You're all I have left to protect. Guilt bloomed in my chest, hot and familiar, twisting the fear into something sharper. Anxiety that clawed up my throat. He leaned forward, recounting the old stories. The night he pulled me from the accident that orphaned me. The whispers of danger he'd shielded me from. Questioning this now. It hurts, you know. Makes me wonder if I'm failing you. His hand covered mine, thumb brushing the bracelets. They felt tighter, unyielding, a cage disguised as care. I swallowed, forcing a smile. I won't go, Elias. It's nothing. But inside the words echoed. What was this calm he offered? A tiny, suffocating peace, or the freedom to think without his shadow? The phone buzzed again, a routine reminder. Lila's text waited, unread, a lifeline I couldn't quite grasp. Not yet. The fog outside thickened, pressing in, and I wondered how long I could pretend the chains were just pretty links. The booth smelled of stale coffee and vinyl seats, the kind that stuck to your skin in the humid coastal fog seeping through the diner's windows. I sat rigid, fingers tracing the edge of my bracelet. Elias's gift. A chain of silver links that suddenly felt heavier, like anchors disguised as jewelry. Jonah slid into the opposite side, his face gaunt under the flickering neon sign, eyes darting to the door like he expected shadows to follow. You came, I whispered, my voice barely cutting the hum of distant plates clattering. Doubt clawed at me. Jonah, the estranged friend who'd vanished years ago, now materializing with promises of truth. Could I trust this ghost over the man who'd pulled me from wreckage after the accident? Elias, my guardian, the one who mapped every safe step of my life. He didn't smile. Instead, he pushed a sealed envelope across the scarred table, its flap crisp and unmarked, as if it held state secrets rather than scraps of my unraveling world. Don't open it here, he said, voice low, urgent. But know this. It's not just you, Maya. Elias's protection. It's a network, files, logs, patterns. I was in it once, thought it was mentorship, until I saw the strings. My pulse hammered, thoughts fracturing like fog on the coastline outside. The journal I'd found in Elias's study, its locked pages now burned into my memory, suddenly clicked into place. Not random notes, but a ledger of control, linking names, dates, silenced voices. Jonah's evidence would tie it all. The interventions that saved me as a kid, twisted into surveillance that choked my every choice. He said you turned bitter. I murmured, testing the words, pressure building in my chest. Deny it, and I'd bury the doubt forever. Acknowledge, and the life I'd known would shatter. Jonah leaned in, his whisper laced with the jargon of old case files. Coercive dependency. Documented grooming trajectories. Not accusations, just facts stacking like bricks in my mind. I saw my story there, reflected in his eyes. The obedient girl who'd traded questions for safety, now cataloging the thefts. The delayed college applications, the monitored calls, the fear he'd planted like seeds. Doubt swirled, thick as the mist rolling in from the sea. But something shifted. Resolve flickered, a spark against the chill. This envelope, sealed against prying eyes, wasn't just paper. It was a key turning in the lock of my silence. I slipped it into my bag, the weight settling like a vow. Elias's web stretched wide, but here, in this booth, a crack formed. Trust wasn't given, it demanded proof. And as Jonah faded into the night, his warning echoing, deeper deception than you know. I wondered, could a former friend illuminate what a protector had eclipsed? The fog pressed against the window like a smothering hand, blurring the coastline into a gray smear. I slumped on the edge of the bed, knees drawn up, the weight of Jonah's words crashing over me like waves I'd never learned to swim. Elias's bracelets clinked on my wrist, gifts, he'd called them, symbols of his endless care. But now they felt like shackles, cold and unyielding. My chest heaved, sobs ripping out raw and jagged, the kind that leave you hollowed. Everything I'd trusted, built my life on, was fracturing. How could I have been so blind? The journal, his journal, the one I'd found hidden in the attic, lay open on the floor, its pages mocking me with Elias's neat script. She'll thank me one day for keeping her safe. The door creaked. Lila slipped in, her detective coat dusted with sea mist, eyes sharp but soft in the dim light. "Maya," she whispered, kneeling beside me. No notebook, no badge. Just her hand on my shoulder, steady. "Breathe. You're not alone in this." I choked on the words, spilling it all. The interventions that started as rescues, the rules that tightened like fog around a lighthouse. He raised me, Lila. Saved me from the streets after my parents. But now? Jonah says it's a network, control. I feel like I'm drowning in it. My voice cracked, the plunge into despair pulling me under, every memory a current dragging me back to obedience. She didn't interrupt, just listened, her empathy a lifeline in the murk. "That's trauma talking, Maya. But you're here, seeing it. That's the first break. What if you hold on to this? Write it down. Make it real before he twists it again." Her words pierced the haze. I wiped my face, the sobs ebbing into shaky breaths. Resolve flickered, small but insistent, like a match struck in the dark. I reached for the journal, not his, but one I'd bought in secret, its leather cover plain and unmarked. My hands trembled as I opened it, pen scratching the first lines. Dates, details, the way Elias's guidance had isolated me. The coded warnings from Jonah. Each word anchored me, turning chaos into something solid, documented. I hid the pages in the lining of my coat, heart pounding with a thrill of defiance. Lila nodded, squeezing my hand. "You're building your own narrative now. Keep going." As she left, slipping back into the shadows, I stared at the coastline, the fog thinning just enough to reveal jagged rocks below. Could I keep this truth from slipping away? From failing before it even began? The question hung, urgent, as I wrote on. The dim-lit community hall in the coastal enclave reeked of polished wood and stale coffee. The kind of place where fog from the bay seeped under doors like unspoken doubts. I stood at the podium, my fingers gripping the edges of the locked journal, its leather cover a talisman against the skeptical eyes of the forum. 20 faces, mostly Elias's admirers, local benefactors, former mentees, all nodding along to the guardian ideal. Lila Brooks flanked me, her detective badge glinting under the fluorescence. But I felt the weight of my own voice, raw and untested. "We've uncovered patterns," Lila began, her tone clipped with procedural edge. "Coded communications, restricted movements, subtle erosions of autonomy under the guise of protection." She slid grainy printouts across the table. Jonah's sealed envelope, redacted but damning, linking Elias's interventions to a web of quiet controls. My heart hammered. Doubt clawed at me. What if they saw me as the ungrateful ward, the girl who'd thrived under his wing? Elias sat in the front row, arms crossed, his smile a polished shield. I swallowed, forcing words past the lump. It's not about malice. It's containment. No accusations, just facts from the journal's pages. Entries I'd hidden, now paraphrased in my trembling notes. Interventions that started as rescues became scripts. My choices scripted too. The room shifted. Murmurs rippled like tide pools. A silver-haired counselor leaned forward. "Miss Ortega, Elias Carter saved you from the streets. This sounds like ingratitude." Elias rose then, unhurried, his charisma flooding the space like sea mist. "Maya's journey is a testament to guidance, not chains." His voice wrapped around them, warm, paternal. The man who'd bandaged my scrapes whispered safety in the night. "These findings are misinterpretations, born of trauma. I've only ever offered shelter." Laughter rippled, approving. Jonah's name hung in the air, unmentioned but noted in our slides. A ghost breadcrumb. My resolve flickered. His charm was a fog, blurring lines. But I clutched the journal tighter, its lock a silent vow. I wouldn't fade into his narrative. Lila pressed on, syncing with my nod. "Exhibits show timelines. Visits curtailed, communications monitored. Not protection, oversight." Trust bloomed between us, a quiet current. Her glance steadied me as Elias's gaze sharpened, the alliance fracturing in his eyes. The forum hesitated, proofs stacking like driftwood against his tide. What weight did ink and evidence carry when charisma spun the story? The question lingered, unanswered, as the room held its breath. The fog clung to the mansion's windows like a shroud, muting the coastal crash below. I stood in the study, heart pounding a rhythm of doubt, the locked journal heavy in my hands. Its leather cover, etched with Elias's initials, EC, a mocking crown, felt like the last chain I hadn't yet snapped. I'd slipped away from Lila's safe house, driven by this gnawing need to face him alone, to test the fracture I'd felt since Jonah's words. Elias entered without knocking, his silhouette sharp against the dim hall light. "Maya," he said, voice smooth as polished oak. "You're back. I knew you'd come around." He crossed the room in 3 measured steps, arms open like always, the benevolent guardian. But my fingers tightened on the journal, suspicion coiling in my gut like the fog outside. "I couldn't sleep," I said, voice steadier than I felt, forcing my feet to hold ground. "Not after everything." I didn't accuse. No, that was forbidden territory, the line where his charm turned venom. Instead, I placed the journal on the desk, thumb tracing the lock, a silent challenge. He sat across from me, leaning forward, eyes locking mine with that paternal intensity. "You've been listening to whispers, haven't you? Strangers feeding you doubts, loyalty, Maya. That's what kept you safe all these years. Remember the accident? The fire? I pulled you from the wreckage. Without me, you'd be lost." His words wrapped around me, gaslighting the edges of my resolve, pulling me back to the girl who nodded yes to every directive. Internal storm raged. Was this protection, or the cage I'd mistaken for shelter? I swallowed. suspicion sharpening into something firmer. The journal. I found it hidden. Entries about me, about guiding the fragile ones. What does that mean, Elias? Who else? My question hung, not an accusation, but a probe, my memory now a blade I wielded without waiting for his nod. He faltered, just a flicker, eyes darting to the journal, before the mask slipped. It's all for you, darling. I crafted your story from the start. The orphan I saved, the one too breakable for the world's cruelties. Without my narrative, you'd unravel. See? I made you need me. The admission spilled, raw and unintended, revealing the web he'd spun. Not rescue, but containment, a tale of peril to bind me tighter. Resolve flooded in, cold and unyielding. I snapped the journal shut, the click echoing like a verdict. Trust shattered. Lila's alliance pulled stronger now, her number burning in my pocket. The fog outside thickened, but inside, the boundaries cleared. What protection had he truly promised? The question lingered, unanswered, as I rose to leave. The camera shakes in my trembling hand, the grainy lens capturing the dim glow of my laptop screen in this cramped coastal motel room. Fog presses against the window, like Elias's old warnings, always watching, always containing. But tonight, I'm the one who hits record. No more whispers in the dark. My voice cracks the silence, raw and unfiltered. A confessional spilling out like blood from a fresh wound. Entries he hid, patterns of control he denied. Dates, names. Other girls like me, quietly erased. Detective Lila Brooks can verify it. She's seen the breadcrumbs Jonah Reyes dropped. We're not waiting for permission anymore. Lila's voice echoes from the doorway, steady anchor in the chaos. Upload it now, Maya. The media's already sniffing the cold case. This breaks it wide. Her hand on my shoulder seals our pact. No more isolation, just alliance forged in fire. Elias? He's severed. A ghost I name as villain. Fingers fly over the keys, hitting send. The file races into the ether, a digital flare amid the noise of scandals and spin. Resolution surges through me, determination melting into something lighter, liberation like fog lifting at dawn. I am the actor now, scripting my escape. But as the upload bar fills, a whisper lingers. Which truth will cut through the broadcast static, the deflections and denials, and hold me whole?